In this session, we're going to have a look at what you can do as a person going into a witness box to perform better, both when answering questions from your own lawyer, that's examination in chief, or if you're watching American TV shows, that's what they call the direct. Then, when the other side, whether it's one party or lots of parties, are asking you questions, that's cross-examination. There's also what's called re-examination or redirect, but that's of less importance to us this afternoon, save the one important reference that I'll make to as we go along. But first of all, the mechanics of giving evidence. Now, in order to do this, everybody has to imagine that you are either a juror in a criminal case, or you're a member of a decision-making panel, be it a judge or a layperson who's called in to give it. So you're the decision part of the courtroom. Selby, me, I'm the lawyer who's about to ask my witness questions. Peter, can you just come to this bit? I've called Peter as a witness. He's come into the courtroom, he's climbed up the stairs. He has with him the report that he wrote. He has been sworn or affirmed. Point one. The quality of your evidence does not change depending on whether you do at the moment believe or not believe in any greater force. If anybody tells you that an affirmation is somehow inferior to an oath, that's crap. They're the same. The critical thing is that when you take the promise, you mean what you say, whether it's secular affirmation or oath religious-based. When you're taking that promise, you should practice while you're shaving or putting on makeup to make sure that you can say the words slowly. Because more than half of all public performers talk too quickly. It's an anxiety-driven response. You can't totally get rid of it, but you can work to overcome it. First time you can overcome it in a courtroom is by taking the card that they hand you, which is typically the size of this book I'm handing up. They tell you to read the words. You put your feet apart like you're riding a snowboard, something else like that sort, and you look at the words and you read them as slowly as you can. You're then told to sit down. Mr. Hunt, would you take a seat? Now, at this point begins what is the most prevalent bad mistake in Australian courtrooms, which is this. Remember, you're the decision maker. However, typically, if Mr. Hunt is the witness, the advocate will stand up, look towards the witness. I've got good eye contact with you, Peter?
Yes.
Right. This is fantastic. It is not. Because, does he have to persuade me of anything? No, it's too late. Do I have to persuade him of anything? No, it's too late. Who does he have to persuade? You. How does he do it? By facing you. So the first thing you have to do when you go into a witness box is do whatever you can, which is sometimes nothing, to try and face the person or group of people whom you're trying to persuade. This often means that when you're giving evidence, you will not, repeat, not be looking at the lawyers. Now, despite my saying that in simple English, most of you, when you go into a courtroom, will forget what I've said and you will glue your eyes on the eyes of your lawyer, thereby ensuring that the audience only gets to see your ear. Big deal. Unattractive. So you must act counterintuitive. The way I like to explain it is as follows. If you drove a car in the last 24 hours and you listened to talkback radio, you're here today because you did not keep looking at the speakers. You looked where you had to look, which was the road. The same thing applies to your giving evidence in a courtroom. What's important is the person or group who need to accept you and the message you've got. Do them the courtesy of giving them eye contact. You get a much, much better response. Now, That does not mean stare at them. We know what we think of people who stare at us. We think they're potential stalkers, and we don't like them. So, you look towards, between, and above your audience, but you don't have a fixed stare on anyone, judge, juror, or anyone else. Typically in a courtroom, I look above and to the left or right of a judge. Now, even though you're looking towards the decision maker, many of you will have the experience that the judge never looks at you. Never mind about that. You keep looking in the same direction. There's another reason for this. So far, it's worked on the basis that Peter's my witness, so it's examination in chief, so we're working as a team. The idea is that the lawyer, through the lawyer's questions, can value add to what Peter, you the expert, could say if you were simply told, tell us what you know. In theory at least, a good lawyer can prioritise the information that you give in such a way that it meets the particular decision-making needs of the decision-maker. Now, while we're doing that, we should both be looking towards the decision-making unit. You can hear me clearly, Peter? He doesn't have to look at me. Does this ever change? Yes. If you're looking at TV and it's, for example, a sexual assault case or any other case in which the witness is emotionally fragile, which will never apply to you, okay? In such a case, then the lawyer has to look more towards the witness so as to give the witness eyeline reassurance, psychological reassurance. With experts, that should not be necessary. Why? Because you are conducting a one-on-one, once-only tutorial for people who need to believe that you know what you're doing, which is quite different from their learning what you do. It's a trust thing, not a knowledge acquisition that matters. Now, while he's up here, this is very important. Note, it's half full. Okay, here's why. Here, right or left hand? Right hand. Okay. Now, can you hold that? All right. The reason for the water glass is there's a great Australian tradition that if someone's asked a question and there's a silence before they give an answer, the Australian convention is that means they're making it up or they don't know. In other words, they're useless. Now, as experts, you ought to think before you speak. That means there's a silence. That means if you're in front of a jury, you're going downhill. So, you have to fill the silence so they don't think that you're dumb or prevaricating or both. To do that, you must reach, when you're asked a question you need to think, you reach for the glass of water, you pick it up and you sip on it. That's time out. Nobody thinks you're dumb while you're doing that. You want to prove this? Next time you're in a pub or a social situation, watch how you or other people use the glass as a means of social interaction. In an age when more people smoke, that is the same thing. But now we've taken that away from a lot of people. It's the glass and the glass only. Okay? Now what's important is, imagine that the judge in this case was here. When you reach for the glass, as Peter's about to do, he must reach into the visual field of the decision unit. So in this case, he has to reach across this way. If instead he reached that way, it looks like he's escaping. People see that? Okay, so this means if, for example, the judge or the jury was on this side of the room here, then even though Peter's right hand dominant, when he gets his glass of water, he must put in the arm. Can't do that. He's got to put in his left hand. Has to change it over. So when he reaches with his non-dominant hand into the field. So, what are the risks in this? One, when you can, and that's not always, you move your chair around so that you're looking into the visual field of the target audience. Two, always ask for half a glass of water. Don't talk till you've got it. Why half a glass? because when you knock it over, it's not so embarrassing. That's the only reason. I've been a witness twice. I've knocked the water over twice.